graduated from high school with a 1.6 GPA.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Dude, you gotta earn a 1.6. That is intentional.
Out of three,
holy moly.
Out of 394 kids in my class, I think I graduated like 383.
Really?
Which is really cool, right? Because I actually graduated. And the other thing is that what my counselor told me was, you should find a trade.
Really? Back in the early 2000s? Mid-2000s?
2003, I sat with my counselor. I said, hey, I'm thinking about college. And he goes, oh, dude, let me tell you something. And I sat there and I was like, oh, wow. I was like, all right, let me hear what you got. And he goes, you should think about a trade. So I was like, you don't think I'm college material? Is not with a 1.6 GPA. You know, D's are not going to get you anywhere in life.
And you hit him with D's nuts.
And, well, I wish I could. I wish I could have.
Young Junk!
Hey, guys. Hey, welcome to Path to Possible. This is actually really exciting. I got Terry Leahy with me. I'm actually really excited. He's giving me a shot here. And I'm actually really excited to interview him and see how everything's going. We want to talk about finances. We want to talk about actually being a business owner. We actually want to talk about being a entrepreneur and in this market, playing from behind.
Yeah, you said something really cool that intrigued me about this whole thing, which was that a lot of people have discussions about business and have discussions about entrepreneurs, but both of us kind of agree that the best stories are the ones where you can learn from someone's mistakes or learn from someone who had to overcome an obstacle. You know, the truth is there are some folks who are set up in green lights their whole life, right? Where everything just kind of works out. And it's like, oh, my dad had this business. It's already set up and ready to go. Here you go, son. And, you know, nothing wrong with that. I admire that. But it is a different skill. You know, that I think actually, that should be its own podcast of inheriting your father or your mother's business and how to do that. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, was anyone in your family a business owner?
No. So my brother was the first one.
Yeah. Oh, so you did have someone to look up to.
Well, of course. You know, he actually started a business because he was a doctor. He was a chiropractor. And when he started his business, like he went through 10 years of shit. And that's how, you know, he came up and, you know, all the things that he's done, he's kind of portrayed to me and said, hey, dude, you don't want to do this. But in business,
you don't want to start a business?
No. Not to say you don't want to start a business. That it's just like you don't want to go this route. Mm-hmm. Now, my thing was that okay, well, when you're a business owner, when you make a mistake, it's very costly.
Yeah.
When you go to work for somebody, so say you go to work for AstraZeneca, right? And you're sitting there being an engineer and you're doing anything about paint, right? And you make a mistake. You know, you go home, you have a drink. Nah, man. You get to go home, have that drink, and go back the next day and correct that mistake. Mm-hmm. When you're actually a business owner, you make a mistake. It is very costly. You know, so like in my business as a garage door guy, I make a mistake. I got to buy a whole new door and tell the customer, hey, I am really sorry. This is going to be another 6 weeks because you have one of those doors. So now instead of waiting 6 weeks, I made the mistake. And now they have to wait 12 weeks for this new door.
Geez. Oh, yeah. 6 weeks is normal. And they wait.
6 weeks is normal, right? Because when you buy these crazy doors, this is what you do, right? And this is what the vendors are. And when you want like a Coachman or a Canyon Ridge, or you want anything that is possible to be like a higher end door, now you have to wait another 6 weeks because I messed up. Now we try to tell our customers like, oh, the vendor messed up. But they see right through us.
Yeah.
Because we're very honest. But when you, like in your business, right? Mm-hmm. If you make a mistake, it's costly because you have overhead. You have people you got to pay. And if you have a podcast that you're doing and it flops, mm-hmm. how can you pay for Dylan? How can you pay for, what you got going on at your house when you make a mistake? So every mistake that we make in business is crazy. So can you talk a little bit more about like when we get to that point, right? And we make these mistakes, do we ever make them again?
Yeah, actually, sometimes you do make it again, because sometimes it is, for a lot of us, we have mistakes in personnel. That's like a thing that all of us have, is where, you have great people, but there's always going to be, that 10% where something is going to kind of go wrong. And maybe it wasn't their fault, or maybe it was a piece of technology's fault, but you got to get involved at that point. And if you got to get involved, you already know you're causing a delay. So it is a little, there are certain mistakes, yes, that you don't ever want to make again, but there's some mistakes that are just part of doing business, and it's really hard to accept that, because if you did everything yourself, soup to nuts, you can know where your error might be. But when you are depending on other people and one of them drops the ball, that's unforeseen. It's unforeseen to them too, but you got to be ready to correct that. So I'm all about now in my career of like, what is the backstop? Okay, if this goes wrong, it's not likely, but if this goes wrong, what is behind it to pick up the slack? So perfect example is we have editors and then there's backfill editors. So Dylan, who's our producer, used to edit all the shows, but we need Dylan producing and doing more on the clients that are coming in. So we have to start transitioning some edits to editors, just because it used to be kind of a two-man band, he and I. Then we had to expand because we did well. Yep. And we have lots of shows, and we have a quality that we want to achieve. So with that means all of a sudden you have to bring in a third party to it, and that third party has to get used to the show and kind of learn how the show works. And so it's like, if he or I cut a show, we know, exactly at 27 minutes and 14 seconds or something I got to fix. I know how to fix it. It'll take me 5 seconds. Right. What if we didn't communicate that to the editor?
Yeah.
Well, then they're going to miss it. And it's really my fault because I didn't notify the editor. But also, how many shows did we have that day? Did I overload the amount of shows that we had and put myself in that situation? And that's where it starts to come into, my point being on that backfill, that's where, okay, editor one pushes something through, right? He didn't get the note that something was off. I see it when I'm doing my review, but editor one is now on the next project and the client is waiting for it the next day. Dylan or I have to jump on it at that point. And if you put me on it as the business owner, there's automatically going to be a delay. It's just how it is. I do my best, but there's automatically going to be a delay.
Well, you have a lot of things to do.
I do have a lot of things to do, right, but I also have the ability to do it.
This is why you hire an amazing team.
Yeah.
But when you hire a third party, right?
Yeah.
When you hire a third party, now you have to teach them how to actually be you.
Yes.
And Dylan. So like you and Dylan started this whole big thing, right? And it's amazing what you guys are doing. Now, the thing is that how do you teach the third party to actually be part of what your concept is? Because a third party is going to sit there and be like, we're getting paid regardless, and we don't give a shit about any of this. Now, there's a show that's here and we don't know, right? And we don't care. What we're here to do is we're being a third party. Now, does it bother you that a third party, now, obviously they were 1099 and a contractor. Now, if they are like a 1099 contractor that comes in that is supposed to help you, you and Dylan are sitting there doing what's right by your business, by your company. Now, a third party that comes in Can you explain a little bit more, like how can you get them to be on your level instead of actually being on their own level of just coming in and helping you? What can help them help you?
Well, so that's a good question for a lot of reasons. Because it kind of, parlays into what you said previously, which is that, how do you teach the next generation, and how do you also make sure your product isn't, destroyed by, a third party that's not really invested. Right. So the way we do it is we kind of have a way of getting someone in as a full-time employee. And it always starts with, you gotta volunteer a project. Right. You got to show me that you're actually that kind of person that will do the work and show me that you'll do the work well with expectation on volunteer status. And again, I'm not giving someone a month-long assignment. I'm giving someone a 4-hour assignment. Right. So that's number one. Then we talk about, okay, what show would be appropriate for them? Some shows are super advanced. Some shows are more conversation-based, and we can articulate that better. So we'll start them off on one of those, but it's like, this is the only thing you do. This is it. You have to nail this in order to get the opportunity to get on the other shows. Okay. In the past, I had to subcontract a lot of stuff out just because I didn't have the capacity. And I know in my business, the game is shoot. The game is produce and shoot. Editing, we'll figure out. Everyone's kind of used to an editing cycle. But if I'm in the field making stuff, that's the best case scenario. So if I'm in the field making stuff, someone's got to be doing the edits while I'm not there. So I started with a spread approach and kind of just looked for people that could get on one assignment, right? And then somebody would hit and be like, oh, you're good. These guys didn't hit. So that was a good try, but we're going to shift theirs over to you. And we're going to start depending on you. We build that up more and more and more until it's like, okay, this is a legitimate team member. We're going to make a full-time offer, and then we'll make a full-time offer and they'll come in. So we just did that. We've done that many times. But to get back to your point, so our Young Junk side of things is Terry, Dylan, Ethan. But we were able to find that Dylan knew how to do this. Dylan had what it took to do this, which means I can free up my time and go elsewhere. And then the game was, okay, we got to bring in who's Dylan's number 2, and then who's their number 2. And what happened was he volunteered with me and we did podcasts together, literally side by side, as we were kind of shadowing, as we were teaching, as we were figuring this out. And then one day life happened and we had a Wednesday night show that we normally do together. We had done it a couple of times before, maybe 4 or 5. And all of a sudden I was not going to be able to make the show. And it's like, okay, this is it. This is the opportunity. What happened? He was ready. He had done it with me. We had established what our kind of style was, and he was able to deliver it and get it done and get it over. I think I came in like the last 20 minutes, and I think I just jumped on the show, okay, like as opposed to behind cameras or things like that. And he did it.
That's amazing. So one of the things I want to ask you is that as you're a business owner, right?
Yeah.
You have to worry about your number 2, right? Your number 2 is Dylan, right? And he is awesome.
Yeah.
I met him this morning. Amazing guy. Knows what he's doing. When these third parties come in, how do you protect yourself from absolutely having one of them come in and be like, I can run this better than he does?
That's a good question. So, and I've been through that. But here's the thing. To kind of piggyback on the last one is, so as soon as I saw Dylan do that, it's like, okay, he should be out on his own, doing it in my place as many times as possible to get the reps.
Right.
What happened was he then developed his style. So we took the starting style that I kind of taught him of how to do it and what the expectations are here. But then he starts running all the shows his own way. He's adding a little bit of his spice, right? Absolutely. So I taught him how to make the base of the soup, but I didn't teach him the salt, the pepper, and everything else that goes into a good stew or a good soup.
Right.
He threw that in himself.
Dig it.
So then what happens is Dylan and I have our conversation, and it's essentially like, okay, I think I'm probably at my limit. And the limit established is more than the average person.
Okay.
So it's like, yep, that totally makes sense. We have to bring in the next thing. Well, who do you think teaches the editor? Do you think it comes all the way back to me to teach the original way to the editor? Or do you think it goes to number 2 to teach the editor his way, so that we're still getting the Dylan style of work and whatnot, but he has now taught that information to the next person?
See, that's amazing, because now what you did was you gave Dylan right of passage to do his way under your thumb, right?
I wouldn't say thumb. I wouldn't say thumb.
All right.
I would say he earned it.
Okay.
Is really what happened is,
Well,
and that's so funny.
It's got to be your concept, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's gotta
it's
be
all
your
the
concept.
original concept and the original style.
But if Dylan didn't have your same concept, you guys wouldn't have a great partnership.
Yeah, if he didn't buy in.
If he didn't buy in.
Yes. So that,
Right.
and that's a thing. That's a huge thing in the creative world.
Absolutely.
And he actually has to bump me sometimes, because I'm like, oh, let's make a change. Let's add this. And he's like, hey, none of the clients are complaining. I'm like, oh, all right, leave it as is.
Leave it as is, right?
So
Because
that's our good dynamic.
No, because I sit there and I understand that completely, because when I have my guy, my number 2,
Yep.
who at the garage his name is Calvin. He's awesome. He's my guy. And when he sits there and says, hey, Mike, I need you to show up. I'm like, I got a meeting today. And he's like, no, dude, you don't get it. I need you to show up. And when we have great people that, like bigger people, we do a lot of celebrity houses. We do a lot of celebrity doors, and we do a lot of people that are in the limelight. So we have to come together and be like, all right, what are we doing? Like, we're not there for autographs. We're not there to sit there and say, hey, we love doing your door. No. We're there to do the door the same way we would do a Mike Sage door, right? A Mike Sage door meaning like I am a nobody. And it's just one of those things that, like, if I expect a plumber to come in and do something, I expect them to do their job.
Yeah.
And exactly what we're doing and exactly what you do. Now, when you have that number 2, and like, if they can get persuaded by somebody else, another company, a third party that comes in and says, hey, you know what? You would actually be a lot better here.
Yep.
What protects us? You know what? It's imagination, correct? Right? Obviously, money. There are a lot of people who won't go for the money, but there will be people that will sit there and be like, they give me the creative inspiration that I can actually do my own show. And I can actually take a show and make it mine while Terry is at home building a family, or Terry is doing his thing. Terry started this thing with a little bit of money, right? Now, when you think about being in your teens and your 20s,
Yeah.
now we have all went through these things, right? We've built into, we were built into going to college. Like, go to college,
Sure.
make your nut and don't say a word. Do your thing, right?
It's so funny. Yeah.
I
No, I do. I'm just thinking of
yeah. I mean,
don't say a word. That's a funny part of it. Just shut up, sit in the class, learn.
Exactly. Shut up, sit in a class, go to work, retire, and then obviously into our demise.
Yeah.
Now, when we go into this entire thing, and I bought in, when I graduated from high school with a 1.6 GPA.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Dude, you gotta earn a 1.6. That is intentional.
Out of 3,
holy moly,
out of 395 394 kids in my class. I think I graduated like 383.
Really?
Which is really cool, right? Because I actually graduated. And the other thing is that what my counselor told me was, you should find a trade.
Really? Back in the early 2000s? Mid 2000s?
2003, I sat with my counselor. I said, hey, I'm thinking about college. And he goes, oh, dude, let me tell you something. And I sat there and I was like, oh, wow. I was like, all right, let me hear what you got. And he goes, you should think about a trade. So I was like, you don't think I'm college material? Is not with a 1.6 GPA. You know, D's are not going to get you anywhere in life.
And you hit him with D's nuts.
And, well, I wish I could. I wish I could have. But he was absolutely right. He knew that college was not for me. But I sat there, and because I was the prick that I sat there and said, well, fuck you, I'm going to college. Well, I was a plumber for a year, and my cousin got me into his business, and, you know, he was like, dude, you are going to do really well in this business. I said, okay. But when you sit there and you start talking to your friends, and your friends are sitting there like, hey, dude, college is so much fun. I'm sitting there, I'm banging this girl, or I'm talking to these people, and dude, I just had class today, and now I'm done for the rest of the day. So we just started drinking, and and you got kegs and eggs and everything that you can do to fuck off in life. This is what they do in college. So I sat there and said, that sounds like an amazing time. So what I did, I went to community college, did a semester, got a 3.5, and I was like, holy shit, I guess I actually did learn something. I didn't learn long division until I got to college.
Wow.
I know. Dude, tell me about it. It was one of the coolest things. I stink at math, right? I am not a math guy. I was a science nerd, and I dug science. And what was funny is that I actually, when I was in college, I was science just came natural to me. I didn't read a book in college. I didn't read a textbook. I barely got the textbooks. All I did was I paid attention in class, took good notes, and then I started tutoring. So I started these tutoring sessions, and all of a sudden people met me up on the 7th floor of the college library. And we were going through things, right? And then all of a sudden I learned that that's type of leadership. And when I went to college, I was like, oh my God. I remember looking at the botany section. So because the botany section was on the 7th floor, and I was like, I probably could have came up with like the greatest new flower. You know, I could have came up with something. Like, I love gardening, but I suck at it. And I will kill every flower. And when you get to the point and you're like, oh, that could have been cool, I didn't do anything. But I had study groups, and all the study groups would come in and I would teach the subject, which in turn helped me get through my finals. I fucked off for 15 weeks out of the semester. And in 1 week, I would learn the entire material by everybody asking questions to me and me explaining things to them. And it was insane, right?
Yeah.
So you get to that point and you're like, oh my God, I'm not good at anything, but I'm good at leadership. So what did I do? I stopped being a plumber, went to college, spent a lot of money, got into a lot of debt that hindered me, and I was $143,000 in debt.
Holy shit.
Oh yeah, because you know what you do when you're young and you get a lot of money? You go to fucking trips to Punta Cana.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, this is awesome. Life is amazing.
Yeah.
But you don't realize what you're doing with with yourself. And then All of a sudden you go to work for Verizon and you're a great salesman. And then you're like, working in a cube sucks. And then you go to work for a more stabilized area, which is the U.S. government. And I was in the Navy division, and I was making, I was a pattern maker. And as a pattern maker, it was so much fun because I basically got to go to work, earn money, and make a living as working as like a wood shop class. And I got to work on wood every day. And then you get to the point where you're like, oh, well, this is actually a business, but you're not making enough. Then you get married or engaged, actually. And then you get engaged, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, this isn't going to pay the bills because I was making $16.25 an hour. Then I started delivering pizzas. And I was delivering pizzas, and then I was doing well. And I was like, all right, well, if I'm making $200 a week, I can actually put this away. And $200 a week is what? Is $1,400 a year.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I can actually do this, and I can pay for the wedding, and then we can take a loan out later. No. I got fired. I got fired from being a pizza delivery driver because the delivery driver manager needed a friend to come in and actually give him hours. And he's like, hey, Mike, I'm really sorry. I can't do anything for you. But I need somebody to have extra hours. And I was like, oh shit, what the hell am I going to do? I was talking to my mom, and she's like, oh, well, I'm a realtor, and she's a realtor. And she started telling me about some of the things that she was going through and some of the things that she had to do. And I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll get my real estate license. And I'll never forget the night that we were doing it, because me and my wife went to Walmart to go shopping because slash the prices.
Yeah.
You
Always low prices.
you had to eat, right? So like I was buying clothes from Walmart, I was buying food from Walmart, and we would go there and we would, and we started talking, and I said, hey, I was like, my mom's a realtor. I said, do you think I should do this? And she goes, well, yeah, go ahead, have fun, as long as it doesn't interfere with your real job. And I said, real job? I said, that's really interesting how we said that. So I got my real estate license. All of a sudden, I'm making $150,000 a year on my part-time job.
Yeah.
And I'm making literally like $50,000 at my real job. And I'll put that in quotations as real job.
Yeah.
So when we go through these things, we don't know what we're doing. So when you grew into this, right, and you came up, what is something that you would tell your 18-year-old self? What is something that you would tell your 20-year-old self or 28-year-old self? Because now you have a girlfriend, and you are now domesticating yourself. And I'll give you a real short story before you answer. Is I was having a conversation with my cousin, and he was telling me about a buddy of his that is in Houston. Now, his buddy in Houston, he goes, we went down there for a weekend. It was amazing. He's got a mountain house, right, in Houston.
Yeah.
And he has a yacht. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, he's got a yacht. He's like, so we slept on the yacht. He goes, because everything else in his business or in his, like the mountain house, makes more money. So that's why he bought a yacht, so that he can actually, spend the time away from his normal house.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what does he do? How much money does this dude actually make? He goes, well, he makes a more normal living. I was like, how much? He goes, about 300. I was like, oh yeah.
Normal.
I was like, yeah. I was like, if $300,000 is normal, bro, I was like, what the hell is not normal? Oh, he told me, he goes, oh, and by the way, he's not married and he doesn't have kids. So I sat there and I was like, so what you're telling me is that not having a marriage and not having kids saves you that much money? He's like, yeah. My cousin has 3 kids. He has a wife, and they all fucking use his money. And it cracks me up. But when I'm sitting there talking to him and he's like, that's the reason why he's got so much money.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the kids. But you are now domesticated.
Well, I mean, I can go into that.
Right? Let me hear.
I have no earthly understanding how someone with a family, and we're talking how someone with a family, how someone who's married, kids, dog, anything outside of work. I do not understand how it's possible to be an entrepreneur and do that. I literally don't, because the way I did everything is I was lucky enough to find a couple of books and whatnot when I was in college, 4-Hour Workweek being the big one.
Hell yeah. Great book.
That was the idea of what is normal and what do you actually need to survive? And when you're a college kid, you actually figure out what you need to survive. It ain't much. I was incredibly happy sharing a house with 5 dudes, just enough money for beer money, and splitting rent and just making it and having an extra like $300 a month. Well, I read that, I think Mark Cuban says this as well, is when it comes to money, your superpower is if you cannot live above that. If you can take that with you for another 10 to 15 years, you have set yourself up in 2 ways. 1, you didn't create massive expenses, right? But 2, you have figured out happiness without money. If you can figure out happiness without money, you'll always be happy. Because what's the worst that's going to happen? You'll end up right where you were. And if you were happy then, you'll be happy all the time. And that actually comes from that book, 4-Hour Workweek, where it's a story of this... Tim Ferriss tells about this guy who he tells 2 things. One, there's a Roman philosopher, I can't remember his name, but he made it a point where once a month he would wear the shabbiest of clothes, eat nothing but basic bread and just some water just to get by, and live in the shabbiest of conditions so that he could say, is this what I'm afraid of? Because if you lose it all, that's all that happens, is that you end up at that point. And he tells another story about this guy who found happiness eating like disgusting gruel in Africa on a mission trip, but had his patch of grass that he took care of every day, didn't have much stress or anything. And then he went and became, a Wall Street big shot. And his whole point was, I might have been happier then when I had nothing and was living in squalor. And that's kind of that's my approach, is stay small, keep all your stuff low, low, low. Don't go for the house, don't go for the wife, don't go for the kids prematurely, or I don't know how you're going to be able to do this, because it takes so much time and effort to do this sort of thing. Because you have to find it in yourself, the ability to then start staffing up. And you have to understand that there's different seasons of business and different seasons of entrepreneurship. I'm a killer when it's me on my own and I have enough time to go out, sell the thing, do the shoot, do the edit, get it done. I don't have that amount of time, but I am a killer when I have that kind of project.
Right.
But I had to learn, how do you now do this with a staff? And how do you do it at mass scale? Volume and scale changes everything. And what I've found is the only way to get through that is through some capital, is through bringing on essentially more resources than you need and then backfilling into it. So because I know how to sell, because I know how to shoot, I can do the first half of it, no problem. And I will push myself into the ground. Right. Hence, no wife, no kids. I don't have to make it to a baseball game. I don't have to do this. It's just, there's an opportunity for work, I'm taking it. There's an opportunity for work, I'm taking it.
Right.
And then I amass this footage, and it's like, okay, well, I'm taking all these opportunities and I'm going to let people down if I don't get the actual footage done. So then that becomes the new business that I have to figure out. And then you got to put someone in charge of that. And then eventually you'll check back in and it's like, what's going on here? Let me get back under the hood here and fix a couple things and then send it back out on its way.
Now, have you had a family.
Yep.
How could you get through it?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I would ask you that.
Yeah.
And that's the, paths to possible. That's my biggest curiosity is how do you manage the time? And it's a little different in a business like mine, I think, than a lot of other businesses because there is no... I don't understand how someone does this without being a technician, without knowing how everything in here works.
Right.
Because that automatically is your superpower, right? If shit hits the fan, if Dylan gets sick and someone else is on vacation or something, I could still run these. Right. I could still do these. I have all of the knowledge. There's some people in this business who don't have any of the knowledge. And so if their technicians are gone and they can make their kids, birthday party because... Well, they got to cancel the shoot. They're not going to do it. That's not how it works here.
Right.
If everybody can't do it, I can. I can jump in and do it, and I will.
It's not that you can, it's that you have to.
Yeah, it's that I have to, and it's also that I should. Some people would cancel a shoot, and life is so busy that for someone to take the time to book a shoot with me, we have to make sure that we're giving them, that we're honoring them. That's what business is to me.
Absolutely.
Is honoring your client and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I'll never shut down because, this camera broke in Washington. I guess I'm getting in the car.
Right.
And I'm taking a different camera and I'm going down and do it myself.
Right.
So I'm fascinated by people who don't have the skill set and still somehow get it done and have like a normal home life. Because I just don't understand that.
Well,
I don't understand.
It gets to a point of trust. Now,
well, sure, you still go
as a business
when you're getting started.
As a business owner,
on your own.
As a business owner, being an entrepreneur, right? And I say I bought your business, right?
Sure.
It wouldn't be that I could do it. It would be the fact that I would have to trust Dylan, your number two.
Yep.
That if I bought it from you, Dylan would have to be my guy, and he would have to be the face of it. Now,
two different things.
Oh, absolutely. And I agreed. And it's hard to put that trust into somebody. Now, if I came up, right, and I went to college for editing, or if I went to college for what do you go to college for in this?
You go to college for like film and video.
All right, so film and video, right?
Or actually, this is probably more telecommunications. You get a degree in TV production.
I was going to say, you get in a degree in telecommunications, right? And me, I didn't do telecommunications. I was a science geek. I was a math and science major, and that was it. I was pre-med. Now, for me to be an entrepreneur in a garage business, and a bakery and a cafe.
Yeah.
What do I know? I delivered pizzas when I was in college. I was a waiter at Nifty 50s. Like, I don't know anything about making a cake. I don't know anything about making any of that. But at the same time, I'm a business owner. Now, I have to put my trust in number two. And number two is now the face of the company. Now, number two, being at the face of the company, comes with a higher compensation. And this is what I was trying to explain, is that like when you play from behind and you have no skill other than the fact that you can lead, understand business, and get your people what they need, that's a different type of business.
Well, what's really interesting about the creative world is, when you're saying like the number two becomes the face.
Yeah.
In the creative world, most people are in the creative world because they want to remain behind the scenes and don't want to be the face.
Right.
However, client facing is much different. So what one could argue what's great about Young Chunk is I'm not even the face of Young Chunk.
Okay.
Because we have shows that are, and now they're the face.
Okay.
And our client facing person is our producer over here.
I love it.
So Young Chunk was actually built properly, I think. And our relationship is very similar to like founder versus president.
Right.
So my uncle always tells the story. My uncle was the president of Kind Snacks. So if you ever had a Kind bar.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was
Awesome.
the president. So the founder is Daniel Lubetsky, who's on Shark Tank and a bunch of other things. But he hired my uncle back when it was, he hired my uncle when they were like $1 million company. And my uncle turned it into a $400 million company, something like that, because he was a CEO. He came from that world and knew how to do it. And this was over like 10 years. So
he became the face.
Yeah, he should be on this show. You want to hear his path to possible. He drove a taxi at one point.
Wow.
Yeah. And then turned into like the classic white collar president's story. Okay. But the reason I bring it up is he would always tell me about his difficulties with Daniel, because Daniel's like me. Daniel's the entrepreneur. Daniel is the imagination. And then my Uncle John was the president. And he's like, but I'm the guy who gets it done. So they would have these arguments of like, great idea, but who runs the show?
Right.
Who runs the company? Who makes everything work? And they would go back and forth, because sometimes I have an initiative that I feel really strong about. And it's my job to bring that to Dylan, who is making sure the train runs on time, and figure out how do we slot this in without derailing the train.
Yep.
And we've done it several times. Sometimes it's a surprise and it's not. And, that can be difficult of like, oh shit, there's a change in here, but I got 3 shows to worry about and you just changed something in here.
Okay.
So I had to learn to not do that, but to maintain my creativity and imagination, because that's what people seem to respond to. And I also had to realize like, derailing a train is the worst thing. This is why things take a long time to implement. Really hard as an entrepreneur though, who I'm like, I got an idea. I have the gear I need. I have the tech I need. I'm going to go do it. Well, if I did that and also affected clients and affected the normal goings on of a business, I'm the bad guy. Legitimately.
Absolutely.
So it's finding a balance of, running basically it's in the same book, 4-Hour Workweek, is what you want to do is you want to own the train and make sure someone else ensures they run on time, especially if that's not your skill set,
But if you get into a situation, right, where they are running on your principles.
They're running on our tracks. Like I built the train tracks.
You built the train tracks.
Yeah.
They need to run on them.
Yep.
Now, the train ain't going to go without a conductor.
Yep.
Now, you can't be the conductor for 30 trains.
That's right.
Now, you need to have that stability to sit there and say, hey, we're going to go about it this way. Now, in my business, what I do is I put together processes.
Yep.
But the guys that are actually in the field are the face of the company with my philosophy.
How many people do you have?
I have 3 techs.
Okay.
I have 1 office manager. Now, what I do is I teach them this one book from Joe Cicera called What Should We Do?
Yeah.
And
I have that on my Audible right now.
I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. And it's a great book, but it's a great book for sales. And it talks about, like, the one sales thing that he talks about is he thought he had a customer, right? Locked and loaded. Well, the customer ghosted him for like 3 weeks. And then he found out that she went with another company. So the guy he actually sees every month at this meeting that they do for their business. And he was like, I can't wait to rip this dude. I heard, and he goes, hey, I actually stole one of your customers. He goes, yeah, it's bullshit. He's like, I offered her the lowest one. I offered her the lowest grade possible that I had in money. How the hell did you do it cheaper? He goes, I sold her a $10,000 program. He goes, what? She told me that the money was a problem. He goes, dude, I'll show you the contract right now. He's like, I gave it to her for $1,250. You sold her for $10,000? It wasn't the actual service that she was upset or that she was trying to go for. it was the longevity that he would come back and focus on that service that they did. So like if they installed a hot water heater, they would come back and service it for fucking 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he sold it to her for $10,000. Had nothing to do with the money. She wanted to know what the owner could do for her.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not about the money. It's about what you offer. So what we do in our business that sets us aside from everybody else is that we go back at a 6-month mark and say, hey, we're going to do a service just to make sure your operations are running smoothly on the 6-month mark. And then we come out at the 1-year mark and we do an 18-point tune-up inspection. Why? You shouldn't have to do all that on a new door. But what new doors do is they make a lot of noises, a lot of settlement, a lot of this, a lot of that. And what we do is we come out and make sure it's on. Because what we were doing was every time we would make an install, we would get phone calls back and forth. Be like, hey, my door sounds crazy. We would go out and service, and it was really nothing. So I was like, damn that. I said, we're going to go out at 6 months. I said, and then we're going to do a 1 year. And the reason why we do a 1 year is because we work with a lot of builders, work with a lot of architects.
Mm-hmm.
They're not our customer. The architect, the builder, that's their customer. And we're coming out and we're redoing this door, right? And we're doing it for the architect and the builder, but we're not doing it for the customer. So when we come back out 6 months later, the architect's gone, the builder's gone.
Interesting.
And we do our thing. And we're like, hey, we'll see you in 6 months. And we're going to do a 1 year tune-up inspection. Mm-hmm. Well, is that necessary? Not really. But after we do that, we will see you 2 to 3 years afterwards. And if you ever have any issue, you call us directly and we'll get you on the schedule. Because they were not our customers. We were the sub in this.
Yep.
But to make them our customer, we come out 6 months, 1 year, and to make sure that they know they are in good hands when they come back to us.
What's interesting about that is a non-snake way.
Correct.
To get a client that you were only introduced to because of someone else.
Absolutely.
Because there are plenty of snakes out there. I'm sure you've encountered it as well.
No doubt.
I have found you just have to accept that there are snakes and not let it change your behavior.
Yeah.
I do not think there is a defense for it. I think it's just like, it's going to happen time to time. Be so good, and that, you know, if you lose someone, it doesn't matter. You're going to pick someone else up. If you lose a client, you're going to pick someone else up. But yeah, I mean, that's easier said than done, because it feels like you know, your girl breaks up with you and then you see her walking around with one of your buddies. It's exactly how it feels,
exactly.
You know, especially kind of at this level. Like, I mean, that really would be interesting if they're like CEOs of banks who are all bent out of shape because like someone pulled up their account and went to JP Morgan instead of Bank of America. I'm sure they do. Right. I hope it's catty and petty.
Yeah. And it gets to that point. And you sit there and
but what do?
You want to make sure that everybody understands that, like, hey, we're here to make sure that you are doing well. And if we put our name on the product, I don't want you to call, Micon Construction. I don't want you to call the construction company that you used to get us back. I want you to call MCS Garage Door Service Company.
Yeah, I like it. It's a classy move.
Us. And it's the same as you. Like if you use a third party, right, to edit, and
which we don't anymore. We had
right. And what I'm saying is, like, you use that in the beginning. Now, say you're the Kelsey brothers, and you help them, and they use a third party, and it's like, it's not Young Junk. It's
what's funny is I was a third party on
you were the
on
third
their
party.
show.
Okay. And what I'm saying is that now you want to be elaborated with them. You want the Young Junk brand
Sure.
to be them. And branding is everything.
It's a big part of it.
It's a huge part, in my opinion. Like, you want to brand yourself. Like me, my branding in high school was dog shit. It was, oh, Mike Sage don't give a shit. He's a 1.6 GPA. He don't care. He smokes. He drinks. He's an athlete, but he's not an athlete.
Kenny Powers?
Yeah, it's a Kenny Powers.
It is, though.
I've
never put that together.
It's a bad brand.
Yeah.
When you look at the brands that you go to school with, whether it's an athlete or a brain or anybody, right? And you look at your valedictorian and you see their brand, your name is now a brand. And it doesn't have to be a company. Your brand, Terry, Young Junk, you are now Young Junk. And you are doing a great service to people like me.
We're trying. We're definitely trying.
Yeah.
And it's fun. There's a couple things in there that are funny. And it's making me think more and more about the path to possible.
Yeah.
Us being in this room, in this studio, the path to possible was having it not work out at another place.
Right.
It was me calling a buddy and saying, hey, I want to build a podcast studio. I can't do it here. I got to do it somewhere else. And him saying, yeah, come on in. And then as soon as I'm set up and running for 3 months, him calling and saying, listen, I got to move another business in here, so I got to boot you. And it's like, okay. But in those moments, you find out what you're made of. And essentially, Dylan and I essentially built this in 3 days, as far as getting everything over from one side to here. And it was brutal and aggressive, but we're here. We found our path to possible, right? And a lot of the paths to possible that I'm interested in are the ones where something goes wrong or there's some issue that drives you there. I mean, it's kind of incredible, all the things that have to go wrong for something to go right.
Yeah.
In certain places. And, I think this podcast is kind of also proof of that. Like, you're here doing a podcast about people's journeys getting to where it actually is possible and letting them know, hey, I did it. You can do it too.
Do you remember our first conversation?
Yeah. We were at, I think we were at an after party for...
No after party. We were literally at the party.
It was upstairs.
We were upstairs at the townhouse in media. And that was our first night of ever meeting.
Yep.
And we actually...
we sat on those 2 chairs.
We had a great conversation. Now, the conversation that we were talking about was more about business.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to go get fucked up with your old buddies from high school and the people that you used to fuck around with. Mm-hmm. We had a great conversation.
Yeah.
That was the first night I ever met you. And it was a pleasure speaking with you. And I sat there and I was like, oh my God. I was like, if anything came out of this night, I was like, it's going to be the fact that I actually met this guy, Terry. Mm-hmm. And, my wife was like, what did you think of the night? How was it? I was like, it sucked. I was like, I didn't like meeting the old people. I didn't like meeting the people that are on drugs. They were on drugs and drinking like fucking crazy and being like, oh, I'm getting my life together. But I met you. So it wasn't all bad night. And meeting you and having a great conversation and having that same idea about business. And you saw a conversation with me and you. I saw a conversation with me and you. And then you have a beautiful studio. This is amazing. The blue lights makes me feel like I'm at home, and having Dylan, like meeting him, it felt like I was meeting like another brother to me. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, meeting you guys was fantastic. And I feel like this is something that we can actually do.
Well, I'm working on something, but there's a brotherhood of ambition.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sisterhood of ambition too.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not excluding anyone, but there are people who the bridge between them is the fact that they do a lot of stuff. And people who don't do a lot of stuff just can't sit at the table.
Right.
You're not going to understand it. It's not going to make sense. But people who do a high volume of things have this brotherhood of like, you actually understand it. I actually understand it. They could say they understand it. They don't understand it. You know, when your back is up against the wall and you have to make payroll and you're going to have to pull it out of like your personal savings, which does not have enough to cover payroll, that is a different human than, you know, somebody who, oh my God, I had the worst day today. My dog had diarrhea.
Right.
Like that. Okay, that's cute. That's nothing. You can't sit at the table. I appreciate you, but I don't think we have much conversation to have. Whereas you and I remember my question because I was new to Delaware County. And I remember I'm like, and my mom's from Delaware County. And I was like, I don't see a lot of people who want to get out of Delaware County, who want to succeed, who want to go beyond. And you said something that I thought was kind of brilliant. You said, you know, it's funny. It's that you can become complacent here, and it's not a lack of hard work, and it's not. There is an odd lack of ambition.
Absolutely.
And I remember I was like, I like this guy. Because I'm an ambition person. Like I cannot be around someone who's not ambitious. I don't understand it. What do you mean you're going to go sit down for the next 20 years?
Right.
What do you mean? Because it's comfortable and because it's easy? To me, that's a trap.
People who sit there and say that they want to retire at the age of 40, what does that mean? Like, have you ever been sick? And when you're sick, you sit there and you're like, this is the worst fucking day ever. What do you think retirement is? If I'm not moving, if I'm not working, and I'm at home, right? So like, one of the greatest things about working for yourself is that you could be at home. And when I work from home, I'm like, all right, I got all the laundry done. I'm getting dinner ready, and I'm doing all the things that a dad would do or a husband would do. And my wife is working the bakery because she feels like she's not there yet. She doesn't have the trust for anybody. Mm-hmm. And it's hard. And like, she never wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I told her, I said, look, you want to spend the time with your kids in the morning? You want to spend the time with your kids in the afternoon? I said, go to work for somebody. And I said, they will not allow you to have that. Now, we bought the bakery for her, and she's starting to get it, and she's starting to dig it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we got 4 or 5 days that we're actually she's actually working. And it's hard when those times come up. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, you don't know what I'm going through. I'm like, yeah, I know a little bit about what you're going through. I was like, I know a little bit, you know? And she's like, you know, I don't know what's going in the account. And I'm like, yeah, I know what's going in the account. I was like, I've been working the numbers. And, you know, when you're working the garage, and you know, when you're working your business, you sit there and you're like, man, how am I going to make payroll this week?
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Sometimes.
Am I going to, yeah. And you're like, all I got to do is Tuesday, I got to make my nut. And one of the old owners, which I will probably bring in on the show at one point to kind of talk about things, because he's like old school, like, He told me, he's like, if you don't make your money by Thursday, don't think about making it on Friday. I'm like, yeah, I was like, it kind of makes sense. Yeah. But at the same time, like, Why can't you make money on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about that is sometimes you have no choice but to run lean, you know?
Right.
That's what people really... You talked about the idea of you're not going to be able to be home with your kids in the morning or in the evening if you got the regular job.
Right.
Well, there's another side of that, which is you're not going to have to stay a minute past 5 o'clock in some places. You're not going to have to be there a minute before 9 o'clock at some places. You're going to be working a shift that when you're done, it's like, psh, see ya. Don't have to think about that until I check in.
That's right.
That's healthcare.
Yeah.
You know, that's healthcare, which is kind of the beauty of it is when you're in, you're in. When you're out, you're out.
That's right.
I don't understand that at all. We don't have that.
No.
We chose not to have that though. And my point is when you decide to go in this lifestyle, it's bigger. You have to change your idea of everything. There is no lunch break. There is no clock in, clock out. There is no time slot. There's none of that exists. You are living a different life, in which case it's like, what are the 5 personal things I want to get done this week? How long are they? I get yelled at all the time for quantifying my personal time, but I have to.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I can have a great 2-hour, I can go out for drinks with a good friend that I haven't seen in a while for 2 hours. And then from there, I can go directly to the gym. Maybe let's go in reverse order there. Nothing worse than trying to lift weights when you've had a cocktail.
Right.
And then I can go and I can have maybe a half hour of like watching a show or something. And then the rest of that is work. That's kind of the expectation that you're going to be going into when you're an entrepreneur is, you know, you as much as you get freedom of schedule, you also don't.
No.
And you have to position your personal life around the work.
Right.
Certainly in my path. I don't know another way. So,
but it's not a bad deal. It's
No.
not a bad deal because a lot of people need structure in their life. One of the hardest parts that I ever dealt with was not having a structure. Structuring something that's unstructured is one of the hardest things ever.
you're doing good.
Thank you.
You're getting into it.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. Remember, that's the point of today is just kind of get into it, understand, I sit down at a mic and I talk across the table.
Love it.
You know, and I have a good time.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So we've been talking a lot about, you know, things that we think about and things that entrepreneurs think about and people who do a lot of work think about. But what we also want to do is we want to make sure we're inspiring the next generation to do it, you know, because we're kind of saying no matter what's going on, there is a path to possible, right? I really like that title because when I went to school and I was growing up, no one even told you what was possible. And that was the biggest problem and it's why we had to build our own paths because no teacher knew how to do anything other than be a teacher at that school. So they could tell you how they did that, not much else. And where I grew up in upstate New York, everyone's dad was a department store manager. Everyone's mom was either stay at home or a nurse. Those were the only options.
Right.
So if you wanted to do something that was neither, for example, this, you had no one to teach you.
Right.
The other thing was there were no doctors, there were no lawyers, white collar was not a thing that existed.
Right.
Or certainly in anywhere where I was. If your dad or your mom did something, that was the only way you were going to get that information because it was not going to be at school and it was not going to be your friend's buddies or your friend's parents and whatnot because they did the same thing your parents did.
Right.
The path, having to find your own path along that typically comes out of, I don't know. No one gave me a path.
Right.
They just said what they thought would work. And by the way, you don't become an entrepreneur by going to college. You don't.
No.
That's just another thing. It's the same thing for directing and for what we do is, you know, there's no path to becoming a director. You just have to start directing and say that you're a director and that's it.
Right.
You know, and that was the hardest thing for me actually in my path. My path started, all I knew was the linear route. All I knew was like, okay, if I want to be in this field, I need to go to school for something in that field to eventually get a job in that field. Well, film and video doesn't really work that way. It's essentially like going to art school.
Right.
They teach you how to do a thing, but they don't really teach you how to get a job after. So the path you kind of have to invent. And I was lucky enough where when I was in school, my very first video production class, Com 242, I was the only person in class to do an extra credit assignment. At that same time, that professor got a call from a TV studio asking, hey, we have a weird situation. Do you have anybody who'd be good for a part-timer? Because I was the only one to do that assignment, he said, yeah, there's just one guy. I interviewed for that, and at 18, I was working professionally in a TV studio.
Oh, yeah.
That is why this is set up like a TV studio, because of that path.
You know how to do it.
Now, I work in TV stations through all of college, and there's not a job available at the station upon graduation. And this is just after my dad died. This is just after my grandfather died. Like, I had a whole bunch of awfulness happen my junior year of college and whatnot. And now the place that I think I'm going to get a job and whatnot doesn't have a job for me. And I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. And so what I do is I say, well, I'll get a job at another TV station. And so in the meantime, I like work at a Starbucks. So I'm a college graduate working at a Starbucks. And I went to Penn State. I went to a good school. And then all of a sudden I see this thing for QVC. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to apply to that. I apply to that, and so did 1,000 other people. I got an interview. And I had way more experience than anybody because I'd been working professionally in TV for 4 years. That's crazy to come out of college and be able to do that. It's not done. And so give me the interview. I go through the interview. I do great in the interview. I come back, I get a phone call, and they say, hey, we just want you to know it was really a pleasure meeting you, and we loved everything you had to do. And out of 1,000 applicants, you're number 2. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, no. And they're like, yeah, we decided to promote someone from within. And I'm like, son of a... Okay.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, well, this is what I want to do. So can you tell the person I interviewed with, a guy named Tim, said, can you ask Tim what I could have done during the interview to nail it? If he has any advice for me for next time. She's like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'll call him. 2 days later, she calls me back and says, Tim was so impressed that you asked how to do the next interview that we want to invite you in for a little, this other position that's like a part-time. We're going to build it for you. And so I go into this position and I start working there.
QVC.
At QVC.
Good for you.
Because I said, hey, man.
I was like, you made it happen.
Path.
Yeah.
Right.
You asked the question.
Now, the interesting thing is it sucked there because I was having a good time. All the models were nice to me. The people selling stuff were nice to me. But the crew it's a bunch of miserable factory workers. Literally like punch in, punch out. Okay, here we go. We're on the job. Like cigarettes and whiskey are there.
Hell yeah.
While they're doing it because it's a 24/7 studio.
Yeah.
But it's not run like a TV studio. It's a business that happens to have a TV studio instead of the other way around. But again, I couldn't have been happier. It was my first like real full-time job.
Right.
In the real world, Starbucks was full-time too. But I learned, somebody makes it very clear to me. The only way to move up here is for someone to get fired or die, literally, because no one leaves those jobs. And they're not that great. So you wait. So the idea is like you're going to wait around 5 years until you can move to the next.
Pay your due.
Sure, pay your due. But the bump is maybe a $6,000 bump. So you're agreeing to give up 5 years of your life in order for $6,000 more eventually.
Right.
And I was like, no, I need to be in control of myself. I need to be the master of my own. That's crazy. So I leave the industry and I'm like, all right, I'm moving to upstate New York. I'm just going to get a random job and figure it out. So I get a job at a bank and it's fine. I've worked in a movie theater selling popcorn and stuff. Like I knew how to sell and how to be cordial and meet people. And I knew it was just, this is a nothing job. Well, I figure it out. What I'm figuring out is like, okay, I think I want to be an entrepreneur because I'm reading during the whole time. And I'm like, get a nothing job where I don't have to think about it so that I can focus on my actual stuff on the side, which is That's what Einstein did. Einstein worked at the post office
Right.
so that he didn't have to use his brain.
Right.
And then he could use his brain on his theory afterwards. I'm no Einstein by any means. But that was the goal. And then I see this car drive by I'm rooming with a buddy, and he sees this car drive by that says videography. And he's like, you should call that. There was a phone number on it. You should call. So I call and I'm like, hey, I've got a job. I don't need any money or anything like that, but I have a wealth of experience in this and I just like to get my toe wet. And this is like beginner videography, like doing event videos and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, come on out. Let's have a conversation. I come out and he's like, I'm a pretty good interview. So I'm talking about all my experience. I'm talking about how I have run out of the tunnel at Beaver Stadium with a camera on my shoulder and filmed in the big leagues in ESPN. I've done that.
Right.
And, normally people in smaller towns don't have experience doing much of anything, and you got to build them up. So he was like, I have a shoot tonight. Will you come on it? Yes, of course, because that's the answer. The answer is always yes.
Always yes.
I go and I do it, and he's looking at me and it's like, holy moly, you really know what you're doing. You're setting up shots, you're directing things, you're picking things up, you're moving things around. Because I had a whole bunch of experience at it. It's like, all right, I want you to join the team. This is basic videography. This is basic one camera, one tripod. Pick it up, move it down, pick it up, move it down, make sure people are mic'd. Basics. And I realized I don't know how to do this. I worked in TV studios where everything was already built, everything was already done.
Right.
I knew how to work in a TV studio and I knew how to make a short film. I did not know how to do videography. And it was wild because it's like, no. I skipped all this. I went to school to go past this so that I could come in, in the Navy, it would be like coming in as an officer or coming in as a captain if you go to Annapolis instead of coming right in.
Right.
And I'm like, no, I went past this. I realized I had a huge gap, though. I knew how to think. I knew how to do higher level stuff. But if someone didn't set up the studio for me, I couldn't do it. And I also knew because of my education in film that, okay, come up with the concept, write the script, gather the actors, find the camera, shoot the thing, bring the lights out. That I understood. And I was like, oh my God, I'm about to use my education when I thought I had 4 years of TV that was going to help me get through. It turns out I didn't know anything.
Right.
I had learned all the theory on one side and made some short films. I knew how to assemble a crew with nothing. And I knew how to get actors with nothing. And I knew how to go make stuff with one camera and a set of lights. And I knew how to work in a high-end TV station. I didn't know how to set this up. And I only knew how to use the package that my teachers had told me here.
Right.
My whole path is conjoining those two and getting us to where we are.
Right.
So I had to take all the experience from TV, realize, oh shit, I have no engineering skills. I don't know how to make anything. I don't know where to put the cameras. I know how to follow the sheet that the producer had for me. I didn't know how to make the sheet. And worse, I didn't know how to assemble the camera to make the sheet. So I had to go back. It was just such a wild way to learn that I thought I knew what I needed and I didn't know. I thought I was a camera guy. No, I wasn't.
Wow.
I knew how to do sports ENG camera work that someone else spent 5 weeks thinking about and just threw me in to hold this thing and go up and down. Right. I thought that was the job.
Right.
So all of a sudden I had no path because I didn't want to work in TV because it was, I didn't like the idea of not being master of my own domain.
Right.
I didn't know how to do production without being at a station. And now I'm learning how to do that at the lowest level. We're talking kids' birthday parties.
Right.
So I could have just gone on TV and stayed there and been a miserable guy because I didn't know how anything worked and I'd be totally lost and not be the master of my own destiny. I could have been a starving artist, but we know how that can go. And that would have been a thing. But then I just got the hooks in me of no, be an entrepreneur. So that way you can have freedom of time and place to focus on the things. And from all of that came full circle. Young Junk is my TV studio.
Right.
Where I did build everything. By which I mean, I understand, I bought those legs, I bought that remote head, I put that specific camera on there because I understand it functionally now, all the way from underneath. So knowing my limitations here and learning all of them through basic videography enhanced everything. So the path to possible is learning, getting obsessed, and then putting yourself in the position where, oh, fuck, I got to learn all this because no one's here to teach me. No one's here to do this. I was good at sales. I could book a gig and then have to learn how to do the gig on my way to it.
Right.
But none of that would have been possible if I didn't take the journey that I did.
But that's all great. That's amazing. That's your path, right? But it doesn't matter what path you took. You still would have been doing something that you love, right? Now, hear me out on this one. And I only say this for our viewers is that if you want to be the camera guy for QVC, right? And you wait 6 years for that $6,000 raise. Is that enough for you? And it could be, like that could be their thing, but you have to understand the expectations properly, and if you understand the expectations, like great, you had other avenues that you wanted to hit. You didn't want to just be this. You wanted something that you wanted to put your name on. You wanted Young Junk to be something big, which is great, but it doesn't have to be everybody's thing.
Well, the other part of the story is really, and this happened to someone, he waited the 5 years and then got the job and didn't like the job.
Right.
Because that's the other thing. It's like he hadn't even experienced what level 2 would be. He sacrificed 5 years of his life wondering what level 2 would be, then got level 2 and didn't enjoy it.
Right.
That was part of me leaving. Like, that is a fate worse than death. It's like, I am going to wait for an opportunity that might suck. Please let me find out if the opportunity sucks and then get those 5 years. I can't imagine what's going through that guy's head.
So what happens is, like a lot of the guys at the Navy Yard when I used to work there, a lot of the people would be like, all I want to do is get my GS. Now,
what's that?
So a GS is general salary, and then you have working salary. Right. So WS is like your working grade, which is you're
on the job.
You're basically like the plumber, the electrician, the elevator guy. You're basically doing all the trades. Now when you're GS, you're in the office. So the mindset is, I just need to get my GS. And when you get there, you're like, ooh, this sucks. I don't like it. And when these guys get there and they're like, I was making more money as a WS employee than I would be as a GS because I hate this thing. I hate this job. Then you got a lot of people that leave. Then you got a lot of people that get in there and they just hate it. And then all of a sudden their attitude changes. They don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to do this. Everything seems like the grass is greener on the other side. But the problem is that nobody understands to even remotely do any type of research about the other side. See, me being on a podcast, I'd probably want to be where Dylan is, probably sitting there thinking like, I'm watching these two fools talk right now and it's probably hysterical. And he's producing and he's like, dude, I'm going to edit the fuck out of this guy. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, look at this dude talk. But the thing is, put him on this seat. And he's like, I hate this. I like it back there with all the technology and all the buttons and it's just like a producer. Like you look at Dr. Dre, and if you ever watch that movie Straight Outta Compton, he's sitting there pushing buttons. I would sit there looking like, I can't even play a Game Boy, bro. And it's like 3 different buttons. This dude's got like a million buttons around him. And every producer has the same thing. So like you sit there and you're probably like, yeah, I could do that, but I don't want to do that. I want to own. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want a name that goes out there. Now, when we try to sell things, right? If you try to sell Young Junk today, Does it have to come with you? Or
No, because that boy over there.
that's where it gets to the point where
For all I know, Dylan has the business listed for sale somewhere.
and that
comes with producer.
and that's what I tell Cal. That's what I tell my number 2 Calvin. I'm like, dude, if you ever think about jumping ship, I say buy this motherfucker because it's nothing without you.
Yeah, I mean, I
Done.
What's funny is, and that's a story for another podcast.
Yeah.
That happened to me in an interesting way. It's kind of funny, actually, in retrospect. Again, this is why I love the idea of a show about the path.
Yeah.
We don't get Dylan there
No.
set up unless I have tragedy happen in the other business.
That's right.
Because, and this is just how it is in the creative world, you got to be ready for your shot. And when it comes, if you nail it, that's it. You've nailed it. Right. You're in. And you don't know when that audition is going to come. For him, I had to go fix. We were building this, and we were building it the right way and kind of going slow and doing it and making sure that nobody was banned. But then all of a sudden it's like, hey, dude, I got to go fix the other side of the company. You got to run this place. And he did it. That's the thing.
That's right.
That's the thing. And there's a luxury of time to trust that this is something that only we will understand. Yes, it would be great if we were able to build it up and hand it off and say, okay, you run it now. We've been raising this horse for the past 4 years together. No, it's fuck. I got to go over there and solve this.
Yeah.
Now's the time. Get on the horse. And sometimes they're going to do it. But it wasn't, I would have loved more time. But people show you who they really are when you pull the time away and say, no. We're do or die right now. Go.
Yeah.
And when they pull it off, it becomes amazing. And that's the reason we're in this situation, that we have a business running without its founder involved in every little thing. And that is the goal of an entrepreneur. We're doing it here. The other side, I'm still screwing up. No.
Trust me, I understand.
Well, my point is that was up and running smoothly.
Yeah.
So I could come over here and work this.
That's right.
As I'm over here working this and getting him ready, we have a mutiny over there.
Let me ask you this biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
When your number 2 gets disgruntled,
Yep.
how do we handle this as business owners?
It's a good question. Dylan, you want to take this one?
Yeah, Dylan. I mean, Dylan, jump in when you want to talk about this, because the thing is that when young entrepreneurs who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs, right, they don't understand the fact that you have to give a lot of trust out to be a bigger business, right? You want to be a landscaper and you want to do it on your own and you don't trust anybody. Great, dude. You're literally just going to be the landscaper, business owner
until your back breaks,
and you're not going to be an actual entrepreneur. And when, like a buddy of mine is actually a landscaper, and his dad built a business. What did he use? He didn't use a number 2. He used his kids. He used his wife and sat there and said, you know what? This is what we're going to be. This is how you're going to be. He had one kid leave. He had one kid stay. One kid that stayed hates the fact of his dad's business principles that are old school. Now, when me and you got into the business, right, we sat there and was like, we want to be entrepreneurs. We don't want to be in the business. We want to be on the business.
Yep.
And when you're actually in the business, it's fun. It's awesome. Like when I go out to do a garage door, I'm digging it. I'm like, this is so much fun. And then I get back, and then all of a sudden, reality kicks in, and you're like, oh shit, I should have called Mycon Construction today, or I should have called Terry today and been like, hey, let's set up this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? I'm sitting there dicking off on, doing a garage door when I have 3 guys that actually do it. And you're doing the same thing with with Dylan, and I'm sorry to keep bringing your name up, Dylan, but when you're sitting there doing all the production and you're doing all the fun things that we as business owners want to do, you come in and you're like, oh, Dylan, what are you doing? Why are you doing it this way? I would do it this way. And then you're sitting there, well, can Dylan go to you and be like, yo, why are you paying that bill when we could be paying this bill? And why are we in this building when we could be in that building over there? Mm-hmm. And why are we eating this fucking pizza over here when we could be going up the street when it's actually better? And you're like, well, I'm the fucking owner. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. But Dylan knows what he's talking about.
Yep.
And we're sitting there trying to give a shit and try to, like, all we're doing is ruining our business if we take over our number twos.
Sometimes.
You know? And
sometimes.
So talk on this. Like this,
sure.
This is where I want to hear it.
Well, that's something to get used to. Every entrepreneur's got to kind of get used to that of
It's hard.
You finally hired someone who does care and does know their stuff and is willing to build this thing with you, right? Mm-hmm. There comes a point where there's some stuff that you're going to want to fight for, and there's some stuff that you want to kind of let it play, because you don't get people like Dylan if you tell them what to do every step of the way. You also don't get to keep people like Dylan if you get in their way on pre-established things, because they're actually driven. They actually want to do a good job. And no one fucking understands how rare that is. You know, this is the theory of A players want to be around A players.
That's right.
So you make sure that your A players are around other A players and let them go. Now, here, this is kind of in year two, meaning it starts with, okay, I'm going to do 2 of these, and now it's kind of blown up and we have a lot of these. I can't do it by myself. Dylan has to take the reins on here and go forward. So there's some things that we would have done in year 1 that we don't do in year 2, and there's going to be some things in year 3. But there's a couple of like fights, and I use that term loosely, of where things are and how things operate. I already know 2 steps down the road of what I want for the studio. But is me forcing that better than this working and working well, where clients are happy, people are happy, and he's got a system created that is happy? No. And I think we'll get there eventually, but it's going to be an interesting shift. I also want this to be world class. We're definitely the best in Philly, but as far as world class, you know, there should be a drone coming around doing this podcast.
Yeah.
But now I'm going into overkill. And so what's great is when you're building something together, you know, I'm the mad scientist. And he's the one who's like, okay, but the lab has to run.
Right.
The lab has to work and the lab has to run.
Okay.
So if I look at this and say, okay, this really started because I believed in podcasting and I wanted to do podcasting. But then I was like, wait a minute, I know how to do this better than anyone. I just happen to know how to do this better than anyone in the thing. And YouTube started blowing up. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I built this at a deficit. He came in at a deficit, but it was important, not his skills. I'm saying the business did not have money to support him.
Absolutely.
To come in. And all we've been trying to do is, okay, let's get it there. Let's get it stabilized, you know? And once it's there, then it's like, okay, now we're going to go into money-making mode.
Now, when you brought Dylan in as a deficit, how big did that hinder your personal income?
We were okay. We were okay at the time. So I was in a position to make an investment.
Okay.
Young Junk should go down as my best investment decision ever. It should, because it was done correctly and properly. But no, I was not in a. This is the journey. This is the tolerance for risk is what makes an entrepreneur versus a killer employee. You know, you could become the president of a company, right? And never really take much of a risk,
Right.
and just follow the path. Entrepreneurs, it's the risk there. It's like, I believe enough in podcasting and my ability to create a podcasting studio that I'm going to gamble on it.
Right.
I'm going to go for it because I'm betting on myself. And there's no surer bet than yourself. And I'm like, I know how to do this. I know how to do it fast. I know how to do it at a volume approach. And I know how to do it in a way that supports YouTube. And I know I can't do it alone. So I need to make sure the team assembled is appropriate. And I'm going to do the team before I'm going to do the budget. That was the big thing. I am more likely to take a swing to put me in the position to be like, you have to figure this out now. And I've done it.
Right.
You know, eventually it won't work out. And that's why you have a savings account. And that's why you have, you know, if shit went to pot, we would still be okay for a couple months, you know, and it's not going to go to pot. That's the big thing of when I look at risk, I'm like, well, everyone's not going to leave. Everyone's not going to pull the plug all at once. That's not how business works. If we do a good service and we treat our people well and we treat them like good clients, one or two will leave. You're always going to lose two, and the idea is gain four, lose two, gain four, lose two, gain four, lose two. My cousin told me that, and that's always stuck with me of like, accept that there are normal parts of business.
It's actually a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just accept it, and it's okay, you know?
Right.
And then it allows you to stay big picture. You know, the big thing about all of this is we got to be big picture on here. First, it was, I know podcasting is working. I know podcasting is a thing that people want, and we've proved it. I know that the move is not to give someone an empty studio. The move is to create a place where they can sit down and go.
Yeah.
Don't have to make decisions. The second you ask someone to edit, make a producing decision, any of that, see ya. We had to create something that was comfortable. You imagine if you don't know what you're doing here, building this studio out and betting that you could do it?
Yeah.
You can?
No, I can't.
Yeah, I knew how
agreeing.
to do it, and I still knew there was a risk involved, but it was worth it.
So let me ask you this. One of the biggest things for our viewers that I want you to talk about is, what is good debt?
Great question. My family, my aunts and uncles, so it's kind of funny. All of my aunts and uncles on my dad's side did well and understood how to do it. And took the path. They took the path, private school.
In this business? Or?
No.
Oh,
I know no one in this business.
Okay.
But just in general, they all did well. My family, we were kind of the runt of the litter.
Okay.
Which was fun. But, you know, my dad didn't go to college, didn't get a professional job. He was a department store manager. He was the most fun guy in the world.
Hell yeah.
We had a boat growing up on a lake. You know, it wasn't a super nice boat, wasn't a super nice lake, but we had that, you know. Yeah. But as far as like classic thinking, white collar, and I use that term a lot because I grew up blue collar. Right. I grew up blue collar, converted to white collar. And this business, by the way, this is a hybrid business as well. Okay. There are blue collar parts of it. There are white collar parts of it. I think Dylan and I both would share that we're kind of hybrid roles. Right. In that we have to do the actual production of it. That's very blue collar moving stuff. There's labor involved. But the planning, the producing, the thinking, the extra stuff, that's on white collar. So it's very much hybrid. But anyway, I grew up blue collar and his whole family was white collar. And then at one point he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to become an insurance agent. And goes that route. And when he does, he now for the first time starts learning about money. Oh, yeah. And I'm about 14. Before that, it was just money comes in, it gets spent. Right. How much? Who knows? We don't look at the books. We just
we don't, yeah. We don't.
But then he started learning about money. And he did a couple of very important things. But the most important thing was when I got my job at 16, he had just switched over and saw the error of how he had been living before. And now that he had disposable income, knew how to deploy it properly. And he said, you got to live off half. Whatever you make, half. The other half goes and gets invested. He told me that at 16. Okay. That's everything. Yep. Because you have built the cushion. So to get into your question about good debt. Yep. Good debt, the reason I brought up both those things is my idea on good debt comes from my uncles who all did super, super well. And their idea was, if it's business debt, it's okay. If it's personal debt, it's not. So if you go into, good question. If you go, we'll save that. If you go into debt for a car, you're an idiot.
Yep.
If you go into debt because I bought a bunch of cameras, that's fine. That's a business move.
Right.
My dad taught me that is way easier with a cushion. If you are, so I actually think your first big business loan of good debt is based on collateral that you already have saved. So I got my first business line of credit because I had X amount of dollars invested in that bank already. And we put that up as collateral. All of a sudden I have a business loan. Most people can't get a business loan.
No.
But if you're willing to put it against, if you're willing to use your personal assets as collateral, it gets you in the game. And then the next chapter is, okay, guys, I've been doing well. I've made my payments. I've used it. I've lost, used it. Let's pull the collateral out. So I'm just on debt. That's how you get good debt. But, and because good debt that doesn't have collateral, I think becomes bad debt. So I think you should only be able to borrow as much as you have. Because so in an instant, if push came to, and we use credit all the time. In an instant, gear, all sorts of stuff. But if push came to shove, I could take that note, I could pay it off in a second and move to Bermuda.
Right.
And I've always looked at it that way. If I go beyond that, I am really flirting with bad debt. Even if it's business debt,
Right.
If I go past what I can pay off like that, I think it goes into bad because I know myself.
I was going to say, you got into a really good realm of actually listening to your uncles.
I know.
There's a lot of people like me. I have a lot of people in my family that actually do well in business, or they do well in their life, and they do well with money, and they do well with money management. Now, me, I don't. I didn't actually. I didn't listen. I didn't think anything of it, because what I did listen to were the other people who were, oh, if I give you $80, go spend it.
Yeah.
Don't save it. Go spend it. This is how I live my life. And I listened to all the wrong people. It was just like when I went to college. Don't get out of college quick. Okay, I'll just rack up all the debt. That's not good debt. It's not a good debt. Like I went to college and I fucked off. I fucked off like someone was paying for it for me. And, like if someone pays for it for you, go ahead, go fuck off. I don't give a fuck. Enjoy your break. But when it comes to like situations like you and I, you listened to the good things. I did not. And this is why we're doing this podcast. And this is why I want people to understand, like, there are good people who will make their money and also give you bad advice. When they do good things with their money and make great decisions, but tell you go fucking live your life at 18, 19, 20 years old, that's bad advice. I was drinking like an idiot at 21 years old when I should have been at home fucking making money and building something. So
it's funny. We'll have to do a part 2.
Absolutely.
A lot of what you said is I totally agree with, but there is this other thing. I keep talking about my dad's advice.
Yeah.
If I had listened to my mom's advice, I would have done nothing. I would have stayed a coward. I would have stayed afraid. I still probably wouldn't be able to go on a roller coaster because I'm scared.
Right.
I was very lucky that I had 2 polar opposites that I grew up with, because I could understand sometimes you got to have the nuts to go do it when it seems like a bad idea, or you will never get off the bench. You'll just stay there because it is crazy to try any of what it is. It is nuts. It is not safe. But what kind of life do you want to look back on? The one where you just didn't do anything, you never took a single chance, and on your gravestone it says, he was a good guy, but didn't do shit. Or do you want, he went out in a blaze of glory? Pick one.
Right.
You know, my path ends in a blaze of glory. Even when I'm like, you know, retiring, I have all my grandkids around me, I'm going to say, light me on fire. We're going out in a ball of fire.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Because it's the only thing. There's a path. I'll tell you what, if you listen to people who say just play it safe and never do anything, that's a path to impossible. You got to take some risks sometime.
Absolutely. And you got to have fun with it.
Absolutely.
And if you have fun with it, it's going to be a great thing. But the thing is, hey, look, I want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
This is an amazing conversation. This is an amazing podcast. I want to do part 2. I want to continue to do this, and I want to continue to give people kind of an inspiration to go about their debt a different way. Me, I'm playing from behind. And when you play from behind, you're basically stuck in the minors until you can actually get through the debt. And banks look at you and they're like, yeah, dude, you're a dork until you can't, like, until you pay off your debt. Now, great. It's going to be a good thing. But if we have more people to explain the situation in a real sense, then people can actually enjoy this. And, you know, we can actually bring bankers on and talk about it, because bankers will sit there and tell you, no. You got told yes your entire life, and then all of a sudden the bank will sit there and be like, oh yeah, no, we can't give you anything. I have a 29% interest rate, but if I go down to 12, I'm going to save like $2,500. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't care.
Well, what's worse than that, and we'll have to get into it next time, is when you're getting nonstop calls from banks offering you pre-approval, and then you go through it and you're not approved. And it's like, what are we doing? Am I approved or am I not? Why are you calling? You called me. You called me.
Yo,
well, we'll get into that next time. I was going to
say, we are definitely going to get into that next time. Terry Leahy, hey, amazing studio, amazing business, amazing advice. I really appreciate you. I want to thank you for being on this. And I want to thank you for being a partner with me on this one. I really appreciate it. Without you, I wouldn't have never started this.
You're welcome. I'm glad you took the risk. This is going to pay off well.
I'm really looking forward to it. We are actually going to see you next time on The Path to Possible. Looking forward to hearing from you. Comment. Give a call. If we do calls, I'm not sure. Really sure we could do calls. Hey, give us your comments. Anything you want to learn about, we will bring on the show, and I will bring an expert to actually talk about it a little bit better. Have a great day. Thank you. Looking forward to next time.
Young John!